Hello everybody. Welcome to my slideshow, my Pecha Kucha on wilderness and its function or its creation by society. Um, Without further ado, let's get started. This is present day Manhattan of New York City. And there's definitely not a whole lot wild about this place, but I guess, why is that, you think? It has air and animals and trees and plants and even a massive park in the middle. Um, so really, how does that make it any different than Yellowstone National Park? This is Yellowstone, this picture. And it's definitely what a lot of people would consider wild, but if you look at it, it's not a whole lot of difference. There's air, water, plants, there's just less buildings, but I don't think that the buildings are what make it wild or lack thereof. I think where it can make it wild, a great example of that can be found here. This is Pripyat, formerly part of the USSR, currently Ukraine. At first glance, doesn't seem to be too much different about this place than New York City, but this is not what this place looks like now. Now it looks a lot more like what you would see in a place like Yellowstone. So this is what it looks like now. Um, More like Yellowstone in that it definitely looks a lot more wild than it used to, and definitely more wild than New York City. But I guess the question is, what changed? Why does it look like this? What vanished from this area? Now let's put that on hold for a second and go back to this picture of Yellowstone. It looks just as wild as it did the first time it showed up, but if you look a little bit closer, there's something not as wild around this lake. This lake is not as wild as the picture would make it seem. This is a hotel just outside of Yellowstone Lake, and places like this do their best to provide a sense of familiarity in an unfamiliar place. And this actually brings me to the point of my presentation, which is really to examine the relationship between chaos and order, or another way to put that could be the relationship between society and wilderness, Mother Nature. Like in this place, this is Curry Village in Yosemite, society really tries to make areas that are inherently wild less wild and inject some order into them. So here is a great example of that. These villages, it's pretty cozy despite appearances. You can still get an all you can eat breakfast. There's bathrooms that are well maintained and everything's operated. Um, and now this is in stark contrast to the backcountry of this place, however, where things are a lot less orderly and definitely much more chaotic and wild. Now, this is in Lyle Canyon, Yosemite. It is an hour and a half, 2 hours, and a good few mile hike into the backcountry of Yosemite. And I speak from personal experience when I say there's very little man made stuff out here. I think we only saw one or two other groups of people the entire time we were out here. So definitely, like Yellowstone, pictured here, very wild. In fact, this is a great example of the chaos of the wild. When I was camped here, it was very nerve-wracking. You're constantly aware of the chaotic nature of the park and just of the bears, and anything can happen, a far cry from the order of everyday society. And so, back to Pripyat. So basically, this is a Chernobyl reactor that exploded back in the 80s. And this is actually a great example of how this abrupt change can be observed directly and metaphorically, this change from order to chaos of nature. After that abrupt chaotic event, that explosion, the carefully constructed order of the city and of its society has completely fallen into disarray. And as you can see, the chaotic wilderness has come back in where society was and reclaimed the city. So this is another great example from the Chernobyl exclusion zone. And this wolf standing in what's left of the city here in this pile of gas masks can easily represent the chaos of nature taking back over where civil society has fallen out of place. But unlike Pripyat, the presence of order and what would otherwise be wilderness is not always obvious at first glance. See, it can be obstructed by society wanting to create or represent the image of wilderness, yet in doing so, are actually making it less wild by constructing this image around it. This is a famous view of Yosemite National Park called a tunnel view. And I don't know if it's named that because of how the granite mountains and monoliths make it look like a tunnel, or if it's because the view appears right after exiting an actual tunnel. Which brings me to my point. This is not actually a particularly wild place. So, I mean, despite appearances, what the pictures would have you believe, this place is actually pretty heavy with people and evidence of people. From the road and the cobbled turnout leading to the view, or of course the crowds and photographers that are always there at all hours of the day. This is what the tunnel actually usually looks like on an average day. This kind of image definitely ruins the illusion of wilderness, which to say, one that society created by trying to exclude all that is surrounding the photo. But no matter how many people there are, the contents of the photo, despite the circumstances surrounding it, are most definitely wild. See, because the mountains are massive, old, and have been here way longer than us and will continue to exist long after. Unlike the roads or the valleys, the mountains really can't be tamed, and chaos is definitely the natural order. Hence why the mountains are often the subject of photos trying to invoke the image of wilderness. They are so alien to what we see every day, to the order of our everyday lives, and as such captivate with both fear and admiration. This is true wilderness, not on a microscopic scale which may be controlled and tamed by man, but on a macroscopic one, where anything goes, and our own society is really just a part of the chaos of the whole world. And because society is ordered and wilderness is chaotic, it seems as though there must be a dichotomy between the two, but the truth is, wilderness isn't a construct of society. Society was and is a construct of wilderness and of man trying to impose order on an inherently chaotic universe.